cybersecurity expert Charles Tendell.
Systemic failures that brought their whole systems down.
Charles Tendell, he's a certified ethical hacker.
Your emails, it turns out, are not nearly as private as you think.
Show really how vulnerable we are.
Charles Tendell, who deals with hackers all the time, says,
if you have to ask yourself, is this right? It probably isn't.
Welcome.
4 hours in a day.
All right. I mean, quite honestly, with all of with the amount of content that comes out of RSA, with the amount of coverage in the industry,
overwhelming.
Right? There's no such thing. Like, competition is amazing.
That's
so
good.
Mounir, you're new to the Charles Tendell show, right? We're sitting here at RSA 2018. Give my audience a little background. Who are you? What do you do? I mean, I see Juniper on your shirt. That's a badge of honor, I guess.
That's right.
Or
it is.
Cone of shame, depending on who you ask.
No, it is. I'm, I have the pleasure to work for Juniper. I came to Juniper through an acquisition, actually, very recently. Middle of last year, I was the head of threat research for Cyfort, a company that was doing advanced threat detection and analytics. And Juniper acquired us last year to fill a particular gap that they had in their product portfolio, especially when it comes to addressing the needs of the federal customers, which is an on-premise presence of the same capability of advanced threat detection as they already had in the form of the SkyATP cloud offering. So here I am, at Juniper, doing very much the same thing. I had Juniper Threat Labs. So with my team of researchers, we make sure that we stay on top of the threats that are out there in the wild and collect all kinds of intelligence that is going to be the core of what Juniper Security has to provide in the form of either the next generation firewall SRX or the SkyATP, or even some functionality of the secure routers that we have today.
Now, wasn't there a big router firewall scare not too long ago? Wasn't there a big thing with, was it Cisco or one of those other shall not be named organizations in the firewall game? Aren't firewalls kind of...
There is always something happening, and yes, just last week I believe there was also a scare about switches and some remote access capability there. It's part of the business. I mean, once you put a product out there, somebody's going to go after it in a way that you don't necessarily expect it. Sometimes you get infiltrated in ways you do not expect it. So I think the important part of this is to recognize when there is a flaw that is systemic versus when there is a flaw that just somebody happens to stumble upon, and make sure that from an organization perspective, these things do not reoccur. And from a customer perspective, you work very hard at making sure that whatever was exposed is quickly patched and customers have a way out and they are protected, because they're really what matters in this business.
Okay, so you said systematic issues, systematic failures. What is the actual problem that needs to get solved? I mean, we've got all these products. I mean, like I said, Juniper's been around since forever. And I mean, how many RSAs have you been to?
A few. I'm not counting anymore.
Right. Beforehand, we were talking, you've been 20 some odd years in the industry, right?
That's right.
Like, with the evolution, we seem to be having the same problem, the same conversation, the same level of tooling, the same design pushing forward. What is the end problem? What are we trying to fix?
Yeah, I'm sure that you've probably heard this before. I mean, it's a cat and mouse game, right? You discover what the bad guys are up to, and you make sure that you close the doors as quickly as possible. Sometimes you're ahead of their game and close the doors before they even get to try them. But unfortunately, there's always this situation of a lag between the kind of security you can provide and what customers actually deploy. Let's take, for example, a couple of the issues we had last year with the WannaCry type of situation. Was it that we didn't know that there was a flaw? Sure, everybody knew. Wasn't there a patch? Sure, there was a patch. And then again, there are lots of organizations that were caught basically surprised by the fact that an attack happened on unpatched systems. Are we always going to have that? I suspect we will. And one of the reasons I think we will is even beyond what you and I or an enterprise manager can do. There are lots of systems out there that are probably very unprotected because they don't update them at all. Mm-hmm. There may be even some fraudulent systems with no licensing that don't get updates, no nothing, and those are always going to be a target. If somebody is looking at building a botnet to attack via DDoS, trust me, there's going to be enough systems out there that are not patched that could be enlisted to do this kind of work.
So the world is just a big enough place where they're still going to have an impact.
I think we will always have that, and some fundamental things are preventing it from being any better. So for example, the lack of true identity in the internet, the lack of trying to enlist entire ecosystems to participate in the security and the enforcement of whatever policies are put in place. All these things coming together means the ground is almost going to be fertile for an attacker to find where to plant a seed.
Okay. Well, so where do we go from here? With all the advancements, with everything that you're seeing, right? What do we do? We're sitting here at RSA amongst 100,000 of the smartest people on the planet. What's a good solution? What's an idea? Where do we make the most impact?
Yeah, unfortunately, if you ask 100 people, they'll give you 100 different answers. And that by itself is part of the problem. I think that a lot of people are looking at solutions from what they can provide. And solving this kind of a problem requires so many parties to come together almost in a selfless fashion. You have to recognize that there is no single solution to this whole problem. You're not going to solve the security problem by just putting endpoint AV engines or agents on every endpoint, because that's never going to be the case. There will always be some new IoT that you cannot put an agent on. Trying to solve the problem with just network-centric approach alone is also not a solution. We have to recognize that
not a solution by itself.
By itself is what I mean, of course. We have to recognize that a lot of parties have to work together and bring all these various pieces into play in order to try to have a better posture when it comes to security. Some of it is just plain intelligence. I mean, sharing intelligence is key. We have government partners, for example, who are very much aware of cyber attacks and preparation towards these kind of things. They do share some of that information with us sometimes, but I think that a better global sharing of this kind of intelligence will go a long way towards securing more and more of our customers than the public at large.
Now, you had said a minute ago that part of the problem to all of this, to why it all seems to be the confusion that you ask 100 different people, you get 100 different answers. But it almost sounds like that's a positive, because the diversity of thought, the different ideas, the collaboration, the idea of my widget, while it may solve a particular issue, right, fits together with this widget. Do we just stop working against one another and just put it all together and collaborate wholeheartedly to tackle this monster?
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily working against one another. People are trying to work collaboratively, but when you put the decision making in the hands of customers, you get two things at the same time. One is the fact that the solution is always customized. One customer is not going to have the same problems as another customer. One customer, for example, who has to defend a critical infrastructure is very different from a customer who has to defend their university campus. So that's on the one hand. But on the flip side, you get now customers who are picking and choosing, I'm going to defend against this and against that, but I'm going to ignore everything else. That automatically leaves an open space for an attacker to pick and choose. And when you get attacks of the type of ransomware, they couldn't care less what the customer looks like. All they care about is that customer has deep funds and they cannot afford being in the news. So they will do everything to breach that one customer.
Well, this morning at the keynote, it was I forget the gentleman's name, the RSA founder, I forget his name. He mentioned something about one of the focuses, or how you tell an industry is improving, is the number of, how the cyber liability insurance premiums seem to be going up, right? Or they seem to be covering more, having value for more, where these companies with deep pockets don't want to have these breaches or these problems or these headlines. But the problem doesn't seem to be getting fixed. We're fixing the symptom, everybody's chasing it from their particular angle, and we still feel like we're losing.
I think it's true. You lose every day, but you win also every day. Yeah. I mean, once you recognize that a lot of attacks are being thwarted and a lot of miscreants are actually being put in jail, and we see like some governments are acting a little bit more than others, you feel like you're winning, right? The fact that there hasn't been any major catastrophe caused by some kind of a cyber attack is also an everyday win that we have to take.
Well, I wonder if it's more like an episode of 24. I don't know if you watched that show or not. Where it's like, yeah, there's somebody out there always. We're always right next to some sort of major catastrophe, but there's some guy yelling into a phone somewhere to make it not happen. So.
And I suspect we're very close to being the truth, actually.
Yeah.
I think it is.
There are a lot of analysts, there are a lot of people, a lot of hackers out there that would actually believe in the war that they're fighting. I mean, honestly, looking at it, seeing it from that perspective of we've got a battle to fight on our hands, because at any point with some of these older systems, some of these problem systems, some of these business justifications for not patching or not doing something, we've got a lot of opportunity to actually get in and do something. Now, how does that make you feel as an engineer, as somebody looking at it from a extremely technical perspective?
It's actually a call of duty for me. To be honest with you, that's the very reason that got me into this business in the first place. When I look at the evolution of the internet, like 20 years ago, I figured, man, this is a really great field leveling thing that's happening. A lot of people who do not have access to education in all parts of the world, all of a sudden do. Now that by itself is a huge gain to humanity in general.
Now, what do you think? Now, what caused that? What do you mean? What was the conduit that gave everybody access to these educations? What was the change?
Just the internet, the presence of internet. Think of Khan Academy, Udemy, all kinds of places now where people in the middle of Africa can go and take classes of similar quality than anybody else around the world.
Yep.
That by itself is huge. But at the same time, I was seeing like my parents, for example, trying to get on the internet. I would hate for them to face the kinds of threat that I see every day. So that's kind of what got me into this whole business. I need to play my role in trying to make sure that this great asset that we as humanity have built is truly available to everybody and used properly and to advance humanity, not to create, bad stuff.
So you're in your head, you're a person that I would assume would believe that the internet is now a utility around the world. It is no longer an option, it is no longer a feature, it is no longer something that can be lived without.
I've lived without the internet, so I know how it is with and without. It's nothing new, but is it a utility? I think it's a great asset to have. Is it absolutely mandatory or completely outside of the civilization? Probably not. I suspect there are still places that do just fine without it. But again, it's like every advancement. Do you actually use it for its full potential, or do you set it aside and only keep it for the elite? My philosophy is that make it available to everybody.
Nice. Well, Mounir, it has been a pleasure talking to you, and I want to get to know more about what it is that you're working on, what you got going on here at RSA. So what are you working on? What are you guys doing here? What are you showing off?
Yeah, so the part of the Juniper Networks booth presence here, and one thing in particular that we wanted to show here is give visibility to end users in something that a lot of admins and a lot of InfoSec teams and a lot of analysts already have access to. Like you and I walking into an enterprise and we have our phone with us and we connect to the Wi-Fi system. We can actually go to the internet, do whatever we want, install any apps we want on our phones or our laptops or whatever it is.
Because we think about it a certain way.
Absolutely.
We're exposed to it a certain way.
Absolutely. But everybody does. And what we do not see is what kind of sites are those applications connecting to? I just downloaded like a flashlight last night, or download some game
Please
or
tell
whatever.
Me you really did not download.
No, I didn't,
a
of course.
But
I
was like, I think it's on a checklist somewhere. Never to do at a security conference.
Actually, what I did is I picked up the tablet from my daughter this morning, and I said, hey, I'm going to take it with me if you don't mind. I'm going to use it at the show, because I wanted to show people, hey, if you download an app, let's see together, where is that app connecting to? Is it doing what it's expecting to? So that's what we're offering today at our booth. People can come in, they open their phone, connect to our Wi-Fi hotspot, and they will see on their phone what apps are connecting to what sites. And it's a time of reckoning. Everybody who's come in today, they go, what? Why is this app going to this? Well, that's up to you to find out. Now, do you want to keep that app or no?
Well, okay, so do you think giving a user that level of insight, a level of transparency, right? Again, 100,000 of the smartest people in the world. One of us see a notification like that, we're going to get it. We're going to like, oh, okay, look, why is the flashlight app connecting to the China, right? Like, why is that happening? We're going to see that, and that's going to be an issue. Most other people, all they're going to know is, oh my God, there's a red button, a flag that says I shouldn't be doing this. I'm hacked. Someone has hacked my power lines. Now they're listening to me. They're doing, they react that way. Are we at the point now where you're comfortable giving essentially the masses that level of notification, even inside of an organization? Like, you're going to an end user who may not know what to do with that information.
Yeah. So there are a couple of aspects to this. First one is, we keep hearing that the weak link in this whole cybersecurity business is actually the human. Because we get phished so much, a lot of attacks come through email, so we need to raise awareness of everybody, not just the technical folks, not just the people who understand cybersecurity. Everybody has to know to some extent that certain things that we do online have actually consequences. Now, we're not necessarily saying that this is the best thing to put in the hands of everybody. A lot of people are not going to be doing this. And by the way, it's not even a product, actually. It's something we just wanted to show for visitors of RSA. Showcase a little bit, here's what your admin already has access to, but you don't. It would be nice if you would. Showing people
the level of information that flows from some of the most interesting apps. I see where that's going. I see that as a positive. Me as an individual, like, you now have full control. Like Cambridge Analytica and Facebook, right? If everybody had known that was going to be the end goal, would they have made the choice to use that?
That's right.
And I see it, giving them that choice. But again, I worry just a little bit, right? Because people are really easy to get to understand, to have a good conversation with. But groups, like massive people, like, can you imagine what would happen if Facebook went down for 45 minutes? Just 45 minutes one day, right? The world would come to an end. Well, Mounir, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I really had a great time. I look forward to doing it again, and I'll have to see you at your booth.
It's my pleasure, Charles. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.